Hi, this is Michael Altos, and we are on part 3 of our discussion of uptake and delivery of inhalational anesthetics. We just finished talking about uptake, the movement of agent from the lungs to the blood. And this movement actually depends on 3 things. The first one we already discussed, the agent's solubility in the blood, the partition coefficient. It also depends on the rate of pulmonary blood flow, which is the same as cardiac output, and we symbolize that with the letter Q. And finally, the difference in the partial pressures of the anesthetic agent in the alveoli and in the pulmonary blood. We call that PA minus PV. This is really just a pressure gradient. This is a very important equation, and you should definitely know it. Again, uptake is solubility, pulmonary blood flow or cardiac output, and the pressure gradient between the alveoli and the pulmonary circulation. So, soluble agents, which rapidly dissolve in the blood, means that uptake will be high. Movement from the lungs to the blood will be quick. Whereas insoluble agents, which don't rapidly dissolve in blood, will have lower uptake. When cardiac output is high, it means lots of new blood is coming to the lungs to sweep away the agent, so uptake would be high. When cardiac output is low, it means little new blood is coming to the lungs to take away agent, so uptake is low. And when the gradient between the agent and the blood and in the alveoli is high, then uptake will be high. But if the gradient is low, then uptake will be low. This graph on the right side is an important graph that you should be able to create. This is a graph of induction. Here we see how long the drug has been administered for on the x-axis. On the y-axis, we see the FA over FI ratio. And we said that induction is complete when we're at equilibrium, when FA divided by FI is 1. The graph shows how long does it take to achieve induction. How long does it take to get to equilibrium? And for soluble drugs like nitrous oxide or desflurane, we see that we can get close to full induction pretty quickly. For soluble drugs like halothane, you see it's going to take a long time before we finally get to an FA over FI of 1. So putting this in terms of uptake, when uptake is high, it means that FA decreases. Every time I put agent from the circuit into the lungs, but then it goes from the lungs to the blood because uptake is high, so FA drops again. My goal was to build up FA, but it keeps dropping. So if uptake causes the FA over FI ratio to increase more slowly because it keeps dropping FA, and if FA over FI is going to 1 more slowly, that's called slow induction. So what we see happening here is that the factors that make uptake faster actually make induction slower. And this is really confusing to a lot of people because we all think, well, induction means getting agent from the lungs to the brain. Uptake is the first step in that. It's getting agent from the lungs to the blood. So obviously, if uptake is happening, that means we're 1 step closer to induction. But it turns out that factors that make uptake faster are actually going to make induction slower. And let's try to understand that. A soluble anesthetic has a greater uptake, not because it's moving quickly to the brain, but because it has a larger capacity to be dissolved in the blood. It takes the blood longer to become saturated, and that means it takes longer for the blood to generate a partial pressure because everything you give the blood just gets dissolved. There's no force for it to escape into gas phase, and there's no partial pressure. If there's no partial pressure, it's not going to equilibrate with the rest of the body, and so it will take longer to reach equilibrium. Let's think of an example. And right now, ignore tissue uptake. Let's just think about lungs and blood. If a patient takes in 1 breath of halothane, and halothane has a coefficient of 2.5, which means for every 2.5 in the blood, there's 1 part in the lungs. So if you actually do the math, you'll see that 71% of the agent will be in the blood, and about 23% 29% of it stays in the lungs. And that can be calculated based on the solubility coefficient. On the other hand, if you inhale one breath of desflurane, which has a coefficient of 0.42, but it's very soluble, then you'll see that about 30% of it transfers to the blood, and 70% of it stays in the lungs. It's almost the opposite of halothane. As you can see, more than twice as much halothane compared with desflurane has to transfer from the lungs to the blood before you can get an equilibration of partial pressures. Let's look at that in a different way. This drawing is trying to demonstrate what it means for something to be soluble or insoluble in the blood. For desflurane, which is not very soluble, it means that you don't have to put very much in the blood before the blood becomes saturated. And once it's saturated, then we start generating partial pressures. And partial pressures are what drive it to move into the next compartment. Halothane is very soluble in the blood. And the more halothane we dump into the blood, it just dissolves. And it continues to dissolve. And therefore, it takes a tremendous amount of halothane in the blood before we've saturated it enough that we can start to generate a partial pressure, which can equilibrate with other tissue spaces like the brain. So this is a very not intuitive concept, and I encourage you to think about it for a while and review it, and of course ask me any questions by email or in class. Let's take a look at this graph over here, which shows time on the horizontal axis and the partial pressure of inhalational agent in the vertical axis. So we start by inhaling some agent into the alveoli, and very quickly the alveoli become saturated with agent. A little bit more slowly, the agent moves from the alveoli to the vessel-rich group, to the plasma. The muscle group takes longer, and the fat group takes the longest. This graph looks sort of like a similar graph that we had for lipid-soluble injected drugs. At time 60, we've turned off our agent. So now, in the alveoli, we have a rapid decrease in our anesthetic concentration because the patient isn't breathing in any new anesthetic. Instead, they're just breathing in fresh air, and the anesthetic is coming from the body out through the lungs. And we see each other compartment decreasing its concentration of anesthetic agent. One more time, uptake is solubility, pulmonary blood flow, and the pressure gradient between the lungs and the pulmonary circulation. All factors that affect uptake, and therefore factors that affect speed of induction. So we've talked about solubility, and when solubility is high and uptake is high, then induction will be slower. Alveolar blood flow, or pulmonary blood flow, is cardiac output, also can affect the speed of induction. So at the extreme, we know if there's no cardiac output, there's no uptake at all. But as cardiac output starts to increase, uptake increases and induction slows. This probably isn't really so significant for the agents that we use today, and especially for insoluble agents. This was more noticeable in the days of ether and enflurane and very, very soluble agents. Also, we don't do a lot of mask inductions, at least not in adults, so we don't appreciate the slowness that occurs with mask induction of drugs as a function of cardiac output. But the thing that you need to know is that higher cardiac output increases uptake and it slows induction. Here we see some graphs comparing different drugs. So for example, isoflurane with a normal cardiac output and with an increased cardiac output showing a slower induction. And this is true for a number of different agents. It's also interesting that if cardiac output is low, this leads to a rapid induction. And when you have an induction with inhalational agents, one of their effects is to drop cardiac output. which causes an even more rapid induction, which causes a further drop in cardiac output, and so on. This is a positive feedback loop. So if you smack a mask on some pediatric patient and turn up your agent very high, their cardiac output will drop and drop and drop and drop until you realize that you need to turn it down. What is the effect of ventilation on the speed of induction? So if we do a mask induction and someone's hyperventilating versus slow breathing, will they go to sleep faster or not? And how does this affect induction? Well, we know that ventilation is basically replacing the agent that's taken up by the pulmonary bloodstream, and it sort of counters the effect of uptake. And we see that when patients increase their ventilation, we do see an increase in induction. So higher ventilation does speed induction. But ventilation doesn't have any effect on uptake. And we can see this on the graph over here. Looking again at isoflurane, here's normal ventilation, here's doubled ventilation, and we see an increase in induction when ventilation is increased. Once again, this effect is more pronounced with soluble agents than with insoluble agents. With cardiac output, we saw a positive feedback loop, but with ventilation, we see a negative feedback loop. So if you breathe quickly, you'll have a rapid induction, and what do these agents do? They lower your spontaneous ventilation, which will slow down your induction. So this is a negative feedback loop. And for that reason, if we put a mask on a child for a mask induction and have them breathe spontaneously, they may be able to continue breathing spontaneously and self-regulate the speed of their own induction. A few final concepts that I would like to briefly touch on. These are really not concepts that I'm going to test in any detail, but you may hear people talking about them, and I would just like to provide you with some background on them. The first is what's called the concentration effect, also known as overpressurization. You've probably seen people do this, where they turn up the vaporizer to 5 or 6% in order to achieve a concentration of 2% more quickly. You're giving a higher FI, so FA will rise quickly. And this is kind of like giving a quick bolus of an IV drug. The concentration effect is only meaningful with high concentrations. And here's the idea. Now again, I don't really want you to spend a lot of time focusing on this unless you have a particular interest in it. But the reason I'm outlining it is to set the stage for something that you may hear people talk about, which is the second gas effect. The second gas effect basically uses this model of a concentration effect of one anesthetic agent on a second anesthetic agent. So for example, if a patient is given nitrous oxide and a volatile anesthetic, the nitrous is absorbed so fast that the second gas, like isoflurane, gets concentrated, and that helps push the gas into the body by increasing FA. And here's a graphic that shows that. The patient's first breath is 70% oxygen, 70% nitrous oxide, 28% oxygen, and 2 parts, let's say, sevoflurane. So the FI is 2%. And then because nitrous oxide is taken up so quickly, half of it is taken up into the lungs right away. And now, since we have sort of this gas deficit, and the sevoflurane hasn't really had a chance to move into the lungs yet, FA has jumped from 2% to 3.1%. And then with the next breath, we have our augmented gas inflow. Another portion of gas comes in to fill up the alveoli again. Again, it has the same ratios of 70% nitrous, 28% oxygen, and 2% sevo. And when we add in that new gas, now we have a total FA of 2.7% of the sevoflurane. So we've gone from 2 to 2.7% by using nitrous as our first gas and sevoflurane as our second gas. Again, not something that I really need to test you on or that you need to memorize in detail, but a concept that I would like you to be exposed to. Before we finish, I just want to make a few final points. We can talk about FA, lowercase a, which is our arterial concentration. So that is, if I could take a blood sample and analyze how much sevoflurane is in it, will it be the same as capital FA, the concentration of sevoflurane in the alveoli? And that's kind of like asking, is the amount of oxygen in the alveoli equal to the amount of oxygen in the blood? So it really depends on how well we're diffusing gas across that membrane. And we know there are things like VQ mismatch and alveolar dead space and non-uniform gas distributions. So they're not going to be exactly the same. And we may see this effect more pronounced with insoluble gases than with soluble gases. The last thing we want to discuss is the reverse of induction, which is recovery or elimination. Most of our modern anesthetic agents are not metabolized. Methoxyflurane and halothane had some liver metabolism, but most of our drugs, if you want the patient to wake up, you need to breathe them back out. And so all the concepts of induction, of moving from one compartment to another, of partition coefficients, they all happen in reverse. So how do we wake up a patient quickly? We turn up fresh gas flows very high. We try to use low solubility drugs. We try to increase cerebral blood flow so we can send lots of blood to the brain. We try to ventilate them so that we're constantly emptying the alveoli of the inhalational agents and replacing it with fresh air. These are all things we do to wake up patients more quickly. But we are a little bit limited. We can't make FI less than 0. And so we may find that recovery from anesthesia takes longer than induction of anesthesia. Finally, I want to discuss diffusion hypoxia, a term that you may hear. Diffusion hypoxia is based on the idea that if a patient is breathing a lot of nitrous oxide, the nitrous, when it's turned off, starts leaving the body and going back into the lungs. And nitrous moves so quickly that it floods into the alveoli. And it can actually dilute the oxygen in the alveoli. So the patient can have hypoxia in their lungs because it's full of nitrous oxide that's coming out of the patient. And people debate how significant this effect really is in clinical practice. Practically, you're only going to need to think about nitrous oxide causing diffusion hypoxia if you're using nitrous oxide, and you extubate a patient and they're just breathing room air. Most of us, when we extubate patients, we immediately give them supplemental oxygen. So even if nitrous oxide floods the alveoli and dilutes the oxygen, it's just diluting it from 100% down to 90 or 80 or 70%, which is not such a big deal compared to if they're breathing 21% and you dilute it down to 15 or 10 or less. Well, that's the end of our discussion of uptake and distribution of inhalational anesthetics. I hope you'll let me know if you have any questions, and we'll see you on the next round of recordings.